United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda as presented. Does anybody want to make any additions, corrections, or move anything around?
I'll move that we accept the agendas.
I'll second.
Okay, there's been a motion by Sean, seconded by Maggie to approve the regular agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next item up is the consent agenda. I would take a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Okay,
Go ahead, Rick.
Rick made the motion, Maggie seconded it. Is there any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item is number 4, violation appeal.
Yes, this is an appeal by Mr. Roiger of the violation that was included in your packet at 210 Central Avenue North. I believe Mr. Roiger is here to speak on behalf of that appeal. So,
Okay, if you want to speak, you just need to come on up, state your name and address for the record, and go from there.
All right, my name's Steve Roiger. I live at 210 Central Avenue North, just 20 feet where the 208 house used to stand that was full of asbestos.
Okay.
On Wednesday, June 28th, 2023, nearly 1 year ago, the city council sent Deutsche Construction, an untrained, unlicensed, in abatement of asbestos to demolish and haul away the house. That home was full of asbestos, as you guys know, and as a result of it, my property got contaminated. I had a professional asbestos company come out and test my property, and they said, yes, it's contaminated. So I hadn't used my yard since the 28th of June last year, almost a year. So I've spent $14,000 trying to get somebody to clean my yard. And it's gonna be another $1,000 to have it re-inspected. And the main reason is because I have to disclose. If I go to sell my house, I have to disclose that that happened. And if I can't prove that it's been cleaned, nobody's gonna buy it. That house has next to zero value. So what I'm here to talk to you guys about right now is I put my attorneys just on hold and I wanna talk to you. So what I'm gonna do, I talked to Angstrom and they said I can clean the house as a, not as Sterling Contracting, but as a homeowner, I can clean it. Now, is it as good as having it professionally cleaned? I won't know till I sell the house. But I can clean it. So basically, I had to wash off the house. Then I had to HEPA-vac the yard. Then I talked to him about mowing. So I mowed and captured everything after it rained so that anything down on the ground would stay there. Then I bagged it, and that's what those 7 bags are right now sitting in the 208 lot. It's from that because there's asbestos in there. And I double bagged it, wrapped the top, and I double taped it just like you're supposed to do with contaminated like asbestos or lead paint and that kind of stuff. So it's secure. Now I got to HEPA-vac the yard again. Then there's areas in my yard I got to replace because I know that there's asbestos in there because it's been identified. So that's going to cost me about another $1,000 to have them come out. I'm going to have about $15,000 to $16,000 invested into this by the time I'm done. And I would just want to talk to you guys because I don't think it's right. That house shouldn't have cost me 1 penny. It shouldn't have cost me 1 minute of time. I should have been able to go to work, come home, and the house should have been gone. I shouldn't have come home at lunch and seeing that my whole yard was all dusted, right? Because Deutsch had no license. He was not trained. He admitted it. So the thing is, you hired him, right? So you guys have the leverage to leverage him and make him reimburse me. So before, you guys had Amigo come out, and Amigo cleaned the 208 lot, right? They just picked up the stuff and then got it clean enough so you guys could seed, which still when it rains, I still find chunks of asbestos and siding that's in the street, right? Because you guys just went over top of stuff. It wasn't like scraped off and then dirt brought in and then planted. It just kind of covered things up. So I just keep picking up chunks of asbestos, right? And I just keep throwing it away. And that's gonna be going on for a while. But you brought him in and you guys have the leverage. Why don't you leverage him and make him take care of me? If I had a customer that I brought in a subcontractor and they screwed up their house and did something, I would take responsibility, right? My bad, I brought him here. I would make it right with the homeowner and I would work with the contractor and make him make it right. But so far, nobody has come forward and said that they'd be willing to help me. Nobody. You did once, I believe. You stopped by and you said you were gonna help, and then you disappeared as well.
Well, I said I'd bring it to the council and I did, but go ahead.
Yeah, but nobody. I didn't cause that mess. You guys did. And the thing is, there was another company, Witt Construction, but they bid it to do it the right way. All you gotta do is read through the stuff and you can see it. They said, you guys pay for an abatement company to come and abate that house, then we'll come and demolish. And that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to, A, bring in a testing company like Angstrom, test the house, identify the asbestos areas. Then you put it out to bid, right? With everybody knowing what you're supposed to do. Then you abate the house, remove all the asbestos, then you demolish. None of that was done. And then plus, I'm not an asbestos person, but I do lead, right? When I'm taking out siding. You don't abate anything when it's windy. And the wind was blowing straight out of the south and it just kept dusting my house all day long. I mean, it wasn't just a little bit, it was all day long. So I'm just trying to figure out, you know, I put my lawsuit on hold and I'm trying to figure out what I need to do to have you guys step up and help me. Because I'm a citizen, you know, and I've been a good resident to New Prague. There's no reason I should be going through this. You guys should have been helping me from day one.
Mr. Roiger, the item on the agenda is a violation notice of some garbage. And so that's what we were supposed to be discussing here this evening. Can you
Well, I'm
help
just-
me understand that?
Okay, so that was part of the mowing the lawn that Angstrom Analytical said to mow it and bag it after it rained.
Okay,
That debris wouldn't, those bags wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the fact that I have asbestos in my yard. And the thing is, I'm talking about it all because I'm here.
I understand.
Because I'm dealing with this, and I had no part, I had no role in this. I guarantee if I was here, or the thing that concerns me, I don't understand why they didn't go through the building department. If this would have been sent through the building department, Deb Wagner would have, number one, would have made sure that he had the proper licensing and stuff. Just like if I pull a permit in New Prague, you give it to Deb, Deb checks to make sure you have all your licenses are current. And if it's a house built before 1978, she makes sure that I have a current lead license, right? If it would have went through the building department, it would have been caught there. But for some reason, it wasn't. And it should have been. But the thing is, this whole thing, the bags over there, it's not my mess. It's not. If the asbestos was in my yard, I would have just hauled it to the compost pile.
Okay,
So that stuff's got to go to DEMCON. You know, that's the very least you could do. But the right thing, right? You know, everybody makes mistakes. But when you do, you take account, and then you go to the person, you apologize, and then you say, how could I make this right? And you make it right. We're going on a year. It's not right.
Okay. What do we need to do tonight?
Take care of those 7 bags.
Tonight, the request is to.
I'm not asking you, I'm
Yep,
asking you.
yeah, tonight, Mr. Roiger wants to appeal the violation notice that was sent to him for, placing those bags that he's, referencing on the city lot up here to the north.
Okay. So you're appealing that, and I understand that. Okay,
It's not my mess.
okay. what does the direction of the council want to do?
I feel for Mr. Rager. I don't know, I don't have all the details, and we certainly haven't, with a pending lawsuit and whatnot, I don't think we're prepared to talk about anything until we
It's paused,
advise our council.
but it's paused, and if I need something in license, or in writing for you guys,
So-
I'd like to give you guys an opportunity, to try to make it right. The thing is, all I want is to be made whole again, just like insurance. I don't want money. I'm not gonna make nothing. I want my expenses taken care of, and I'll clean it up. And then I'm taking the risk. Because when I go to sell my house in 1, 5, 10 years, right, I might take a hell of a hit on that house. Because if that house is sitting there, and another house similar to it is 5 blocks away, similar price, which house you gonna buy? Because I have to disclose that. And what's that gonna cost me when I sell? Right?
I don't think we can give an answer tonight without us talking to our legal counsel because of the
Okay.
lawsuit, okay? So, we'll take it under advisement, and our counsel will be reaching out, or the city administrator will be reaching.
And if I need to sign something, let him know that's paused, that's fine,
Yeah,
right? Because this lawsuit got shoved towards the League of Minnesota Cities. They sent me a letter, and basically it said, they didn't say my yard wasn't contaminated. They just said, sue us, right? They have so much money. What am I gonna do? They've got millions and millions and millions of dollars to spend. So I'm gonna spend $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 suing the League of Minnesota Cities just to try to get my yard cleaned? It's not right. It's not.
Is there a time limit that we're working on here, Ken?
Time limit was to have the bags removed today. So if you look at our city code, the appeal basically would pause the violation until we get it resolved. So if they can stay there, as long as we're waiting to get legal advice.
Not if they're considered hazmat, I mean,
Yeah, so I'd say we need some sort of direction at this point as to whether to continue with the violation or pause the violation or remove the
what I was
violation.
wondering.
Like we kind of
yeah, but we got a legal
three paths
inquiry,
right now.
because if we were to, remove them bags ourselves, that might be, accepting a certain amount of responsibility for it. So you're gonna have to check with Scott. Can we put this on hold, Ken?
We can pause.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, it is up to you guys of how you'd like to handle.
Let's put it on hold and get a hold of, do a legal inquiry with Scott and,
figure
find
this
out how
out.
he wants to go with it. If we can just get rid of it ourselves, we'll do that, but I'm not saying that's gonna happen. See what the attorney wants. We gotta go by the attorney just like you do, so.
Well, find out from the attorney what you need to do to work with me. What I need to sign.
Yep.
And then you guys have the leverage. I have no leverage with Deutsch. Same thing, he's got deep pockets. What am I gonna do? Right? Spend $60,000, $80,000 suing Deutsch Construction? He did the same thing. Those guys aren't saying that my yard didn't contaminate from that house. He's just saying, go spin, sue me. It's not right.
You need a motion to make that pause?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to make the pause on the violation notice until we can research it through,
So moved, don't need to be too
legal.
specific.
Okay,
And I'll second.
Rick made the motion, Maggie seconded it. Any other questions of the council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
thank you, sir. We'll-
Somebody will be back at you. Thank you, Steve. Okay, next item on the agenda is, city engineer projects update. Are you gonna handle that, Matt?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Update is for the 2023 project. You might have noticed last Thursday, they did the second lift on all the streets. So that project is 95% complete. The only thing that is left is the trail still. They have a second crew coming in with smaller equipment to do the trail. That's why it was not done originally on Thursday like I was anticipating. 2024 project, you've probably seen the weekly update on that one. That one's moving along. And then 2025, we did send out a letter this last week to anyone that would be adjacent to those properties, just kind of notifying them that we're in the process of collecting information on the street. So nothing has been decided, obviously, but we were just getting some information on it and moving on to a future project maybe. But that's all I got.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the next item. Ms. Abby Schmidt is up from Abdo.
Good evening. I think, oh, perfect. PowerPoint is just being pulled up now. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Abby, and I am a manager for Abdo. We performed the 2023 audit, and that's what I'll be going through tonight is those audit results. So we'll go through the PowerPoint, really touching on the highlights of 2023. If you have any questions, just feel free to stop me, and I will be happy to answer those. So we'll talk briefly about our audit opinion and our responsibility as auditors. We'll go through the general fund results, your other governmental funds, your enterprise funds, and then some key performance indicators at the end. So as auditors, we're required to issue an opinion on the financial statements stating whether they are correct, materially correct, so that users of the financial statements can be confident in their confident in the financial statements. So for 2023, we issued an unmodified or clean opinion saying that the financial statements are correct materially. We also are required to do some Minnesota legal compliance testing. So there's a lot of state statutes regarding things like contracting and bidding requirements, time period for payments, collateral coverage, and we did not have any instances of noncompliance noted during the audit. We do report two audit findings for the 2023 audit. The first is limited segregation of duties. So that really just means there aren't quite enough staff to segregate all financial responsibilities within the office. Pretty common for cities of your size. That's really where the council comes into play even more to kind of cover and provide those additional controls. And then for 2023, there were a few larger adjustments that Abdo assisted with and worked with Robin and Leah on to make sure that everything was stated materially correct. So we issued a finding related to that, but all those were resolved, and that's why the audit opinion was clean or unmodified. Getting into the general fund, so this.
Excuse me, Abby.
Yeah.
Referring to that,
Yep.
You're referring to material audit adjustments when you're referring to that? Then?
Correct.
Last comment?
Yep.
I understand there's adjustments always, but did this raise to a certain level that it need to be specifically noted as it did here?
Yes, so we take into consideration scope or materiality. So once an item reaches a certain threshold that we feel might skew the readers of the financial statements to read them incorrectly, that's when we would issue the finding. So it's really the dollar amount that would impact the financial statements. So that's where the finding comes in.
Were there any issues that warranted a note to this finding as far as an explanation of any of them?
No, we worked with Robin and Leah and got the corrections from them as well. So kind of went through. Can you elaborate on what your question? Exactly what you're asking.
I'm referencing the EDA issue because
Okay.
apparently there's a difference. There's nothing that we did differently from one year to the next for many years, but yet
Correct.
that was a finding of misstatement, which a misstatement is a pretty material thing in my mind. And that's why I wondered if you shouldn't write a note to say this is just a change in the way the auditors saw it or.
Yep, I
received it or
understand what you're
something.
saying. Yep. So really it comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, the financial statements are the responsibility of the city.
Right.
So that's why it was included as part of the finding. And like you said, it really was just a change in how it's being reported. I would have to look back. I'm sure it was reported like that for years and years. It doesn't really, in the overall scheme of the finding, doesn't make a large difference. We could note in the kind of management response what it relates to, and that might add some clarity if if you feel like that would provide clarity for users of the financial statements, that it wasn't something that the city recorded incorrectly, it was just how it was presented and how the GASB standards work on what is considered enterprise versus governmental fund.
Well, I'm just one person, but I think that would be appropriate in this case, since it's not a change in anything that we did. It's really
Let me
maybe our
jot that
own
down.
understanding, but we've had a tax levy for the EDA for, I don't know, 20 years or 15 years or something, so it's nothing new.
Right.
As far as revenue source and that type of thing. Some of the other things I can understand and are still important.
Bruce, do you have a page number on where you saw that?
Page 137 on, or 137 of the audit documents.
Okay, thank you.
Any further explanation or questions regarding that finding or the EDA change specifically?
No, thank you, but thank you.
Then getting into the general fund, this table or graph compares the city's fund balance policy, which is to maintain 50% of next year's budgeted expenditures in unassigned fund balance. So fund balance that's not spoken for any other purposes. You can see the orange line's right behind the black, but the city has maintained that policy for the last 3 years, even with the larger budget adjustment or budgeted expenditures from 22 to 23. That was really due to planning to spend a lot of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars in 23. So you can see the budget leveled out in 24. Really 23 was kind of an outlier, and it is kind of a steady increase if you exclude the ARPA expenditures in 23.
Abby,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna ask you a lot of this.
no, that's okay.
In my lap. I don't think I have another one, so I promise I'll be good. But, so we're talking about general fund balances and percentages and policy limits.
Yep.
This is where it's kind of confusing to me sometimes, because on the audit too, it talks about unassigned as a percentage of expenditures is kind of a guideline or a gauge to look at to see how we're doing for liquidity purposes. The same thing with fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. I notice on the graph you're using the original budget number, but then on the audit you're referencing, I think, the actual or the revised budget numbers in the expenditures. And if you look at those numbers, we didn't make policy as far as it's below 50%. Is that, I think that's what the audit shows. Is that?
Right, there
Reading
was,
that
so the city assigns some funds for future projects, kind of earmarks them. So to meet that policy or maintain it, those are adjusted accordingly so that there is, the 50% of unassigned of next year's budgeted expenditures.
And that's really kind of where my question is, if we're using that as a guideline or at least a policy limit, or even looking at 50% or anything like that, I wonder about it just because the way that we move from assigned to unassigned, like last year as an example, is where we had the issue about buying the park building. So we took something from assigned, therefore spent the money, and caused that ratio to go down when you look at unassigned to expenditures. So that kind of dynamic's gonna happen over and over again if we have large purchases, or if we take money out of assigned to build a police garage or whatever. So that percentage is gonna look worse.
Well, will that percentage, if you're pulling out of assigned, in theory, we could have $20 million currently assigned to something and maybe, say, 3.2 unassigned to meet this policy. If we spend down that assigned balance, it's not gonna affect the unassigned. Well, never mind, I see what you're saying based on but because you're right, you're basing it based on the expenditures, so.
Yeah, the audit is looking at this ratio as being something we should look at, is to look at liquidity and how we're doing. But just that dynamic that happened last year caused it to go down to 42.2%. And this graph is reflecting 50 as in our budget. But that really is from the park garage, basically, moving from assigned. So then I wonder, should we have moved it from assigned to unassigned before we did that, and therefore wouldn't have affected the percentage? Because it's gonna happen again sometime in the future, and
Right? I mean, at the end of the day, you have the 50%. It's just whether it's spoken for or earmarked for a project. I don't know if I can speak too much to
well, our policy
how it's
just
being
talks about
maneuvered.
unassigned percentages, and I'm wondering if it's a good policy then. We just use unassigned.
right. It's
It is a common policy, is it
I
not?
was that's what I was gonna say. I haven't seen any city that skews towards a policy for anything other than unassigned. Because really it's at the discretion of the city to move those funds to unassigned if needed. And if needed to cover the policy. 50% is a little bit on the higher end of what I've seen in policies. Sometimes I see a range of 35 to 50%. So it's a little more wiggle room to kind of fluctuate year to
But you
year.
kind of see where I'm coming from. We didn't actually make the policy this year.
Right,
We were too low. We didn't make 50%, that in actuality, so.
right.
And so if we do the same thing next year, we'll have the same result. We won't. And it's just kind of lucky that we made the 50% this year. Or even, well, I guess we didn't. What am I saying? Yeah.
Right, yeah, it was
to
intentional,
it.
intentional move to meet the policy or to maintain the policy. I don't know if you think that it should be presented as, where it actually was and then where it was moved to maintain the policy. Generally, it's not a ding or a finding if you don't meet your policy. It's more of a target established by the city. So even if we did present the 42.2%, it wouldn't go against the city in any way. It's more about how the city and the council wants to maneuver the money, where that should be sitting at year end. Because really, there's nothing stopping the city from after year end putting it into an assignment and then seeing how the year goes, moving it to unassigned if needed, or to keep it in assigned if the general fund has a good enough year to meet that 50% without taking any from assigned.
So these percentages, did you see, are there like standards that you see that are good percentages for liquidity in this area? Or is 70 or 100% or
It
total fund balance to percentage? Is there something that
It
good?
really, really varies on how the city wants to operate. Some cities keep a really high level of fund balance in the general fund, and then do transfers out when needed for projects. Some cities, maintain a lot more capital projects funds, bond in those funds, so the general fund kind of stays just where it needs to be for operations, and that's kind of where New Prague is at a little bit more. And it will, like I said, 50% is a little bit on the higher end for at least policy wise, but you'll see cities anywhere from 20 to 100%, just kind of depending on how they plan their funding and when it gets moved out of the general fund for specific purposes.
Well, thank you. When I looked at the numbers here and it went down from 59 to 42, I thought, wow, that looks bad. But when you think about what happened, it makes sense. So I don't think it looks as bad as it
Initiative.
seems, but thank you.
Yep. And on this next slide, you will see too that there was a planned decrease in general fund balance. It was budgeted for to decrease that and spend down some of the funds from the prior year. So that's another reason why it decreased, is it planned to decrease fund balance in total. So there was additional left in assigned, that got moved to unassigned, but looking specifically at revenues, you did come in over budget around 890,000. 360,000 related to the public safety aid received right at the end of 2023. So that wasn't really assigned or spent out. That does show up as restricted fund balance though, because there are some specific requirements on what that can be spent on. And then there was 337,000 in interest earnings. Typically just budgeted a little more conservatively, not knowing what the markets are going to do and if the market value is going to decrease there, so came in over budget in that area as well. Your expenditures were right in line within 9,000 of budget, so that was as planned. Transfers were consistent with budget, and like I said, a budgeted decrease in fund balance ended up with a decrease of around 400,000 in your general fund balance. A look at your revenues by type. So really the two kind of outliers here would be your intergovernmental, again, that public safety aid at the end of the year, and then the ARPA dollars that were claimed and spent. And then in the other category, there was some insurance reimbursements that came through. So those would have expenses that offset those revenues. Your expenditures by type. A few areas to note: general government did increase a little bit, some additional costs related to the software conversion, so that was a big undertaking in 2023. Culture and Rec also increased use of the Emerald Ash grant funds. Payroll costs were also up around 18%, went from 2 full-time parks people to having 3 full-time, so that kind of accounts for where that increase came from. But again, your expenditures were in line with budget, so planned expenditures. And then other, that would be the Culture and Rec capital outlay with the parks building. Your special revenue funds, really all I want to touch on is that you do have around $320,000 left of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to spend. Those need to be spent or obligated in 2024, so just something to be aware of to make sure all those federal requirements are met. Your capital project fund balances, so this is just a summary of where all your capital project funds are at. The TH19, that was a big project that did wrap up and will be closing in 2024. And then you will see some deficits in the CIP 24 and 25 funds just related to the timing of the bonding and the funding of the projects, but the project's getting started with some engineering costs. This slide is a summary of all your governmental debt. And then Robin, on the next slide, it's a snapshot of what your obligations look like for the next 10 years. So really, it starts to decrease around 2027 to 2029. So we'd expect this to kind of flatten out as you issue those CIP 24 and 25 bonds, keep that levy level, and level out those payments around the 2027 to 2029 range. Any questions before moving on to the enterprise funds? Okay. So on your enterprise funds in the top graphs, really what you want to see and how an enterprise fund should operate is that operating receipts should cover your operating disbursements and your debt payments. So your water fund has done just fine in that area. You can see there's a decent amount of gap in 2023, which allowed for a cash flow of around $200,000 in 2023. So that's a good, you can see on the bottom graph, you do have a good reserve over kind of what we calculate as your desired minimum target cash balance, which would be 50% of your operating costs, just to know that you can cover your operating costs for about half of a year with cash reserves. So maintaining a good level of reserves to cover any unexpected costs and to possibly fund some smaller projects. So that's really what you want to see in an enterprise fund, is covering their own costs and a little bit of cushion just to go towards repairs, maintenance, unexpected breaks, and possible projects in the future. Sewer utility was a little bit closer to break even. There was a 2% rate increase in 2023. I didn't mention there was a 3% increase for water. Always good to keep small increases year to year, so there's never really a big jump to shock citizens, and still maintaining those revenue levels to cover your costs. And again, really good reserve in 2023. You can see from 2020 to 2023, it's just continued slowly growing. If you ever had a project or unexpected repairs and maintenance, you have enough cash sitting there to cover some of those internally without having to go out for bonds or outside funding sources. Electric fund as well, a little bit of increase in costs, but those were passed along with the energy cost adjustment to offset some of those costs of SIMPA. Kind of seen that in other cities that have an electric fund just with increased energy costs in '23. So I think it was smart to pass on some of those costs to kind of level it out. And all in all, no concerns in the electric fund either. Golf fund had pretty much a break-even year. You can see a drop in cash from '22 to '23, but that was really just spending the remaining bond proceeds of 2022 on that equipment. So no concerns there. You still have grown your cash. If you look at the trend from 2020 to 2023, you've been able to maintain a good level of reserves. And generally, your golf fund does well enough to kind of maintain its own operations. Not much to note on the ambulance fund. There's been solid collections. Your cash has increased reserves, so if anything does come up where you need a new ambulance or something like that, it can be covered internally. So your rates are being sufficient to cover the costs of operating your ambulance service. And then lastly, on the stormwater utility fund, again, your operating receipts covering your operating disbursements. Your cash reserves did build. You cash flowed around 230,000 from 22 to 23. So all in all, trending up in the right direction to be able to cover some of those fixed asset or capital needs if those come down the line. And then really quickly, we just like to cover what your total cash balances look like. So very consistent from 21 to 23. Majority of your cash sitting in those enterprise funds, like I mentioned, earmarked for future project needs. Yeah, but very consistent over the last 3 years. And then a few key performance indicators. So we compare the city of New Prague in black to other class 4 cities, so cities between 5 and 10,000 in population, and then other cities in Scott County. So unfortunately, the state has still not released the 2022 information, but we still like to present and show kind of where the trend is going with the city of New Prague compared to where the other cities were at in 2020 and 2021. So there was a significant decrease in tax rate in 2023. Residential values across the city went up almost 20%, so that accounts for why that tax rate took a dip. And then your taxes per capita, generally right in line with your peer group and very minimal increases. A little bit of a bigger increase from 21 to 22, but very consistent with other cities. Pretty much every city had to do a double-digit levy increase in one of those years just to cover those increasing costs with inflation. So it did level out in 22 to 23, and like I said, very consistent with your peers. Looking at the city's debt level, so you do tend to have a higher amount of outstanding long-term debt per capita, but on the right-hand side, you can see once those bonds were a good chunk of the bonds were paid off in 2021, so your debt level did drop in 22 and 23 to around 19% of total expenditures, and very in line with where your peers are. Obviously, if you issue more debt, like we looked at the graph before, it should level out pretty well with your bonds dropping off. There might be a couple overlap years with new interest payments and such, but overall it looks like it's kind of stepped out to be able to maintain pretty flat rates there. Looking at your current expenditures per capita, you can see New Prague's done a good job of maintaining very low levels of increases, which has been kind of tough the last few years just with inflation and costs rising, but very, very small increases of your operating costs per capita. And then your capital expenditures per capita, 21 was a little bit of an outlier just with some more costs, but that is really dependent on the needs of the city per year on those fixed asset side. Lastly, we just like to show what your debt service coverage in the water and sewer funds. So you're around 100 to 200% able to cover your debt obligations, so no concerns there. Right in line with other cities your size, so shouldn't have any issues being able to cover those future debt payments in your enterprise funds. So all in all, it seemed like it was a pretty standard year. The enterprise funds are doing well. Really no concerns on the rates there. They seem to be covering your cost just fine. And the general fund, it did decrease, but that was, again, planned for, so no concerns that we saw there either. Any questions for me? Or anything Robin or Josh would like to add that I didn't touch on?
The tax rate, when that goes down, is that a good thing or a bad thing for us?
I guess I would make the argument that it's kind of arbitrary based, because really the tax rate is the total tax capacity as decided by the property values across the city versus how much the city levies in a given year. So if the city says we need to increase our total levies by 3%, but we build a bunch of houses, you're gonna see the tax rate go down because our tax capacity goes higher. Maybe the city, maybe values spike 20%, but the city only needs 3% more taxes, well, that's gonna take your tax rate down. People's taxes are still going up, and that is really their taxes are going up roughly 3% across the board while their values went up 20%. So I think, as we've discussed in the past, tax rates are really one measure of what's happening, but I personally believe that year-to-year levy versus actual tax impact per household is a stronger indicator number year over year than tax rate, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Abby, when do you think the state will release 2022 information? I mean, it seems a little.
Yeah, we expect to get it around March. They said that it would possibly come out this summer, by the end of the summer, they said. So not sure on the exact timeline for that. We'll add it in, obviously, when we get it for next year's audit, and present another year there, but there's just no guarantee next year with when they'll actually release those data tables either.
Do you give that information to city staff then, in between the audits, or?
This is the first year it's happened, so I don't know that we've come across it to plan for that. It's something we could, once, it takes us a little time to work the data and format it in this way, but if that's something that the council would like to see, we can certainly do that when it gets released. I just have no idea if it'll be in June or September.
Right, and I understand that, I don't wanna, no offense, I don't wanna get another $10,000 bill for the city just for that information.
Oh, no, that wouldn't be, yeah.
But I mean, if you, I don't know if you can funnel that, or just show so you actually do update this once you get that information, this
Correct,
audit.
yep, it comes in a big data tables from the state, and then we format it, do all the calculations so that it pulls into each city's
Is
graph.
that part of the cost of what we paid this year for the audit?
Yeah, it's just generally all wrapped up into the engagement fee, so that is something that, once that data's formatted on our end, it doesn't take much for us to get it to look like this.
Sure.
So that would not be an additional charge, it's just kind of part of the client service package, just like questions that come up during the year.
I know, I don't know about the rest of the council, but I'd like to see where that data is too. This is
I'll make a note, a monthly note to see if it's come out yet.
It's a good question, Sean, thank you.
Anything else of Abby?
This is just a clarifying question, so long-term debt to per capita, is the long-term debt used there all debt, including a debt that's paid by assessments then?
So it's all governmental debt, so that would include anything being paid back by assessments, but only in the governmental funds, not your water, sewer, or storm, or anything.
Right, so this is where I get, challenged sometimes to try to compare ourselves with other communities. We might have a different assessment policy than other cities, so we might have more of our debt paid by assessments than other ones, because that number seems high, but then if you look at expenditures per capita, we seem to compare favorably, at least from the 2021 numbers, to other cities in our class anyway, so.
Right, yeah,
That's why it seems kind of,
the level looks high, but
but-
I wouldn't say that is anything against the city or anything, because like you said, like as a percentage of your total expenditures, you're right in line, and your taxes per capita are right in line as well. So if you had an extraordinary amount of debt being covered by taxes, you would see a higher level of taxes per capita as well. So the city's maintained that level of debt while keeping it in line with the actual payments in line, which just means it's leveled out well to be able to, one drops off, one comes on, and not a lot of big fluctuations in year to year.
Okay. Good. Any other questions? Otherwise, yeah.
the other finding I guess I forgot to ask about is the budget number. I thought we approved revised budgets, but is that what it's referencing when it said budget?
In
did
the
not
other
match?
matters, are you
Yeah.
referring to? So there was a fund or two, I think, I'd have to look back at the details, but a few of the funds that, what we do is we take the budget out of the software and compare it to what the council approved. So there were some budgets in the software that wasn't in the budget documents, or vice versa. I'd have to look at
Okay.
specifics. So nothing raising to the level of a finding, just some minor funds that aren't actually presented in the audit report. But just for budget to actuals, to make sure that what the council approved is what we're seeing in our system when we import it.
I forget, did we approve revised budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Bruce, what page was that? I've been going through this thing a little bit.
And Abby, am I right that the budget discrepancy we corrected at the revised budget? I believe it was the adopted budget that those funds were in there.
I believe so. We tie out the adopted and the revised, and that would have been part of the governance letter, I believe, not in the big audit report. But yes, that was resolved. Just something to check in the future, especially with the new software conversion, to make sure that everything that's listed in the software is something that you approved and vice versa.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there's not any more questions, for Abby, we will, I'm looking for a motion to approve the auditor's report.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion by Rick, seconded by Bruce. Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Abby,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, and thanks
Very
Leah
good.
and Robin for your work on the audit, and it was another smooth audit for us, and we always enjoy working with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abby.
Thanks, Abby.
Appreciate your team and
See you
you.
next year.
Yep,
Say hi to Brad from me.
I will.
Okay. All right, the next item up on the agenda is the public is invited to speak on matters not on the agenda. So is there anybody that wants to speak to the council that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, I will move to the public hearings. We're gonna have a public hearing at Lynn's Cafe at 208 Fourth Avenue Southwest. Approval and issuance of an on-sale intoxicating liquor license and Sunday liquor license. So with that, do we need background prior to?
I think you
Opening-
pretty well summed it up.
Okay.
The applicant is here if you have any questions. So, otherwise, no, that's all I got.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing if anybody wants to say anything about the, application for a liquor license for the Etlands. Does anybody want to say anything? I see or hear nothing, so I will ask for a motion to close that public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion by Sean, seconded by Bruce. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. So the next item would be to approve their liquor license, and I would take a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so Maggie made the motion, Sean seconded it. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. You went through all that pain to sit here for that.
Hey,
You learn a lot.
we're gonna be getting Bloody Marys with our eggs in the morning?
Yeah, you're welcome. You run a great business there, so.
Very good.
Yep.
Just so you guys are aware, you don't have to hang out for the rest of it, but you certainly can as well.
Yeah, you know, yeah, it's just, thank you.
The pressure.
Okay, number 9, we don't have an order. Number 10, ordinance for adoption. Ordinance number 349, repealing chapter 152 of the New Prague City Code and replacing it with the new 152 regarding floodplain regulations. So,
Yeah, I really don't have anything additional to add. After the introduction and first reading at the last council meeting, we did post the required 10-day notice, and we did not obviously get any other input or any concerns from the public since that time. So we look forward to the council having a second reading and adopting that ordinance. And I just wanted to add, we do have a follow-up item to publish by summary and a resolution to do that. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you have probably received a few letters in the past month about, from FEMA wanting to know when we're gonna have our
yeah,
filing done. This will conclude that and we'll get that filed.
okay, because I just got one this week.
Correct.
And this will take care of that.
This will take care of that and we'll have
Okay.
everything ready and able to be usable by July 17th when the new maps take effect.
Okay, good. All right, that was my next question, but I would take a motion for the second reading of the ordinance number 349.
So moved.
Rick made the
Second.
motion, Maggie seconded it, and any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Then resolution 2405, and this is the requesting the short.
Just so you shorten it, not have a 10-page legal in the paper.
Okay. I'll offer resolution 24-05-20-01 approving publication of ordinance number 349 by title and summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Sean seconded it. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, general business, appointment of board and commission members for the listed boards there.
Yes, so I mean, as you guys know, over the kind of the past 3 Mondays, there's been board and commission interviews. For most of the boards, I guess, I would say, we received at least enough applicants to fill. Of note, there is one golf board seat that will still be open, so if anybody knows of anyone, that is certainly something that we can entertain. There will also be a partial park board opening that is also available. So,
Okay.
yes, if you know anyone or want to get the word out, that'll be 2 seats that are still open.
That park one is the one that's really important though, so if you don't have a quorum, let me know and we'll get it okayed and,
I think you're talking about the planning commission, because generally it's the planning commission that,
well, the parks is important too, I mean.
well, yes, but I mean like
there's a quorum.
statutory requirements of
Yes,
things that
that's
run through the
planning,
planning
but-
commission, so.
Yeah, Rick, I think we're okay on the park board. We've got a good complement of people, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's gonna be 7 and plus the youth representative, so yeah.
Will the youth one be able to vote if there wasn't a
No,
quorum?
no, they won't, but we haven't had an issue, so I think we're pretty good.
Okay, so we have Nick Slavic for the EDA.
So I would walk through these individually, so start with your EDA, then move on to your golf board, and you could just kind of walk your way down the,
You want to do them individual?
correct.
Okay, so Nick Slavic was the incumbent and the next one, or he re-upped. So for the EDA board, I would take a motion to select Nick Slavic.
So moved.
Second.
Maggie made the motion, Bruce seconded it. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Golf board, we had, Graham Keener, is that how you say it? I'm sorry. And he even said it and I can't remember. And Bob Kniff, who's an incumbent, apply, and they both look good, so, with that, I would take a motion.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
Maggie made a second, Rick seconded, or Maggie made the motion, Rick seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Park Board, we had Shannon Stika and Youth Representative Jacob Bezek.
So moved.
Okay, to appoint them. And Sean made the second, so any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yeah,
I wonder if we want to clarify whether Shannon will be fulfilling the 4-year term or the 1-year partial. I think the assumption is the 4-year.
Yeah.
But just to make sure that was the
Let's-
intent of the motion.
let's,
That was my intent.
the 4-year?
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to
really?
approve Shannon Stika to the 4-year term.
And I'll still second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, Planning Commission, Ann Ginkle and Deborah Theraldson.
And just a question there, is Ms. Theraldson going to potentially be both planning and utilities? Is that the,
So Deborah did apply for both. There's entirely that possibility that you can be on multiple boards.
okay,
So,
I just
yeah,
wanted to,
That would be
Does she
up
know
to, I'm pretty sure when the application came in, I'd have to go back and look at it again. It was one or the other.
Yes.
Is kind of how it was presented. But it is entirely possible that somebody could be on multiple boards if that is the direction the council wanted to go with it.
Is there just one opening? I had thought there were two in planning.
There is one opening for planning commission and one for utilities commission, as far as I'm aware, unless something has changed
Okay.
recently.
Because I thought there was room for two.
For planning? Who's leaving? Jason? Who's?
No, just, Ann's term was up.
She had a partial term in her.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And then Deb's taken, we're just doing the one.
Yeah, we gotta make a decision.
Correct, so the council would
Okay,
choose
I'm sorry.
between
Between
Ann and
Ann
Deborah.
or
Saw
Deb.
both names.
oh, thank you, okay.
Yep, yeah, for both planning commission and utilities commission, there's only one spot, and so you'd be choosing between the two names.
Well, that's
Thank
too
you.
bad.
Mhm.
Wonder if Deborah would be interested in park board.
I was gonna say, I could always,
Or golf board.
depending on how this plays out, I could always reach out to, of the 2 spots, there's 3 people vying for them. I could always reach out to that person and see if they'd be interested in either the park board opening or the golf board opening as well.
I'd be fine with that.
Me too.
So you want a motion?
So
for
I want a
Ann
motion for whoever you want
Gingle?
on
For
the
planning commission.
planning commission.
Oh, so moved.
Well,
I'll second. And
Ann, you want Ann, right? Rick?
Yeah. Sorry.
So there's been a motion to appoint Ann Gingle as, planning commission, seconded by Sean. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Same thing for utilities.
I'll make a motion that we approve Chuck Nicolai for
Okay,
Second.
utilities commissioner.
okay, motion was made by Sean, seconded by Rick. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 And then are you gonna,
Motion
oh,
carries.
sorry. Then you'll get a hold of that Deb and then she'll come in and then we'll do it again next month.
No, she won't.
She won't have to.
She won't.
She'll be offered,
Yep, so at this point, I can reach out to her if the council
I mean,
wishes, and if she wishes to go forward, we can have it on the next council agenda to approve her to whichever of those 2 that she would like, if she wants to.
Good.
yes. I would agree to do that. I know that she is extremely interested in serving the community, so I would love to have her involved in some way.
Okay, and I
was in
guess,
the interview, so I thought she was very willing, like you said,
Yes.
to be involved, and she seemed to want to participate, so
Okay.
I'm hoping that she would.
And I guess
Be interested.
I will say, concluding that, if there are any open seats on anything, I guess just so Patrick knows as well, we do continue just to advertise that throughout the year, so if, come August or December, somebody decides they wanna see if there's any openings, they can certainly apply at that time to fill those seats.
Yeah.
All right, the next item is just miscellaneous, public hearing for draft Lower Minnesota. What is that? Is that information for us, or?
Yeah, if you want to attend, it happens to be at the fire station on, May 30th. I'll be attending and collecting any information on behalf of the city that we may or may not, need to know. So we just wanted to include that in case you're, interested, they want us to share that.
So who's doing it? Oh, Leesore County. Okay. All right. And there's, anybody wanted to, well, we'll go around the horn, I guess. Now, Rick, do you have anything?
No, I think that, what I got, we're gonna take up at another time anyway, so, I was, in my head, I, was wondering, on the budgeting for the, police department, they were going to, put a fire engine off, and I just,
Yes, yeah, so that discussion will come, that's on the CIP for 2025, and so we'll have that discussion here as we roll into budget season as to how we will fill out that CIP, so.
okay,
Okay,
then I have nothing.
all right, Bruce?
Nothing.
I have one thing, over the weekend and the week before, I took calls and in person, I don't know, criticism, complaints, information about what's happening to the property of Mike, that Mike Wynot owns. So is there a big hole there? And can anybody speak to that?
Yeah, I can give you an update. We did issue a, buffer encroachment violation to the wetland, with Mr. Wynot. He excavated, for a apparent home that he actually ended up applying for a variance for, which we're reviewing at planning commission on Wednesday night. He did, I believe he has by the end of the week to get that filled back in and seeded to correct that violation notice that was issued to him. So he's aware of what needs to be done and what needs to be taken care of. He also has, 3 buffer signs that were also taken down around the perimeter of the pond, and he has to get those back up as well.
What are they?
A buffer sign that says, do not encroach on the buffer.
Right.
So we're doing.
He took them down.
We're doing what we wanna do with everybody else, huh? There.
Well, he can't,
We
Keep
can't
that
speak
up.
to what he's saying, but he has had a violation, and we have informed him of that.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Mayor, I had one thing that I did forget to do.
So I guess my thing is, you know, it's not nice or fair to the residents and, you know, so we should stay on top of him. I guess I would like to.
yes, and we are following due process with the notice and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, and then just keep it up, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Rick,
Yeah, Bruce is here, and I don't get a chance very often to have him thank his guys and, linemen. They don't get enough credit for what they do, and so thank them for me.
okay. Sean,
I just had a quick question going back to the consent agenda. I apologize I didn't get in there, but I was gonna ask Chief Applin. The purchase of the duty handguns, there was 14. Oh, did Tim leave?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't see him sneak out.
What's your question? Him and I
Well,
have
there's
talked
only
about that quite a
12
bit.
members, right? Do we have 12 members, but we need 14 guns? I was just asking why,
so,
I was just curious why we're
Yep,
getting 2
I will,
extra.
pass that question along to him, and,
Not a big deal, I don't wanna hold it up, I'm just curious why we needed 2 extra. If the-
typically from what happens is they get an extra one in case one breaks.
Okay, which makes sense.
And they get an extra one if,
For training or just?
if God forbid, there'd be an officer involved shooting
Oh, I see. Okay,
to switch handguns.
sure, okay, makes sense.
So that's typically what those are for, but Tim might have a different idea.
I think, you know, being Scott County Sheriff's Department, I trust you, and I was fine with it anyways, I approved the 14, but I was just it was just a
Yeah.
point of curiosity.
But typically, that's what it's for.
And that makes a lot of sense, so, no need to ask him.
Okay.
That was the only question I had.
Because I don't wanna step on his toes either, you know?
And Mr. Mayor, I do not have anything.
Okay, thanks, Maggie. Josh?
Just a reminder that we have a closed session special after this.
Robin?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Ken?
Nothing.
Bruce?
Just a quick note, there'll be an article coming out in the paper here, but New Prague was part of a larger group that received the National Energy Star Award. And so we received that on behalf of SIMPA, but it was that we met our goals for energy conservation spending for the past year. So that's 1.5% of our gross revenue needs to be spent towards energy saving products to our customers, and we met that goal and then received a recognition for it.
Good,
It's wonderful.
Nice.
Thank you.
good. Nothing, Matt? Chief, nothing? Okay. So I'll look to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.